Most terrifying Skinwalker stories from Reddit that will keep you up all night.
Every evening after work, I take my dog Buster for a walk. A big, friendly, red-haired Labrador. He's my best buddy. Always cheerful, full of energy, his tail never stops wagging. We usually go to the park nearby, a quiet place with paths and a few benches. That evening, everything was just like usual. We walked around the park, Buster chased sticks, and then sat under a tree to catch his breath. I glanced at my phone for just a minute, and at that moment, Buster suddenly pulled away, slipped out of his leash, and bolted towards the bushes. I called out to him, but he didn't stop, as if he couldn't hear me. I ran after him, but he disappeared into the thicket before I could catch up. I called out again, louder this time, but the silence around me was almost deafening. My heart pounded. Buster never runs off like that. After about 5 minutes of searching and calling, panic was setting in when I suddenly heard familiar barking from the bushes. Buster emerged, but something about him seemed off. His movements were slower, his tail hung low, and his ears were pinned back. I approached and patted his sides, but he didn't jump up joyfully as usual. He just stood still and looked at me with those dark, unblinking eyes. I thought something might be wrong with him. Maybe a snake bite or a tick. It wasn't the first time we'd had a scare like that. Once, during a hike, Buster had stepped on a rattlesnake. He became sluggish and dazed, not responding to my commands. Another time, a tick bite made him lethargic and disoriented. I checked his fur and paws, no bites, no ticks. Maybe he was just scared? I patted him again, but he didn't even lift his head. As we walked back home, I noticed his gait had changed, awkward, as if his legs didn't quite work right. I thought maybe he'd sprained a paw while running through the bushes. His steps were uneven, almost as if he'd forgotten how to walk properly. When we crossed the parking lot, Buster suddenly stumbled and froze for a moment. I leaned down to check his paws. They were clean without any cuts or injuries. But then I noticed something strange. His joints looked slightly twisted, almost out of place. I patted his sides again and suddenly realized his collar was missing. That was unsettling. I distinctly remembered putting on his collar before the walk, dark green with a metal tag. Maybe it had come off in the bushes when he broke free. I went back to look for it, but couldn't find it anywhere. When we got home, I let Buster off the leash. He slowly climbed the porch, glancing around as if unsure of his surroundings. I opened the door, and suddenly the real Buster dashed out from inside, jumping up at me, wagging his tail, his usual joyful self. I was completely confused. I turned to the other Buster standing on the porch. He slowly turned his head to look at the real one. The real Buster immediately started growling, his hackles raised. I'd never seen him act like that before. The fake Buster slowly stood on all fours, his movements unnaturally stiff. He clumsily stepped off the porch and headed toward the park, dragging his hind legs slightly. When he moved a few yards away, he suddenly sped up, as if regaining balance, and silently vanished into the park's darkness. I froze, unable to believe what I had just seen. Was it all just my imagination? I quickly locked all the doors and went to Buster, who pressed himself against me, still trembling. I tried to calm him down, but he kept looking at the door, ears alert. The next morning, I ran into my neighbor while walking Buster. He asked, "Hey, did your dog get out last night?" "No, why?" "I saw him near the park." I called him, but he didn't respond. And when I got closer, he growled at me. Labradors are usually so friendly. I thought something was wrong. Now I only walk Buster during the day, but sometimes at night I hear something scratching at the door, as if trying to get in. I look out the window, but the yard is empty. Buster just stays close to me, quietly alert. Every time I pick up the leash and open the door, I can't shake the thought of that dog I saw that night. I don't believe in skinwalkers or other urban legends, but this story lingers in my mind, making me question what I thought I knew. Whether you believe it or not, that's up to you. I'm just sharing what I experienced. I'm a wildlife photographer. I love shooting at night. Animals become more active, and the chances of capturing something rare are much higher. This time I chose a national park known for its diverse wildlife. I arrived late in the evening when the park was already empty. I parked my truck near the trailhead and made my way into the forest. I picked a spot on a small hill that gave me a good view of the clearing. I set up my camera with a telephoto lens, perfect for capturing from a distance. The night was dark, with only the moonlight filtering through the tree branches. I crouched down in the bushes, listening to the sounds, the occasional hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves in the wind. I adjusted my camera settings and waited. After a while, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I looked around, but the forest was empty. The wind rustled the branches, making it seem like something was moving just out of sight. I tried to dismiss it as my imagination and focused back on the camera, but the feeling wouldn't go away. I switched the lens to a wider angle and snapped a few shots of the surroundings, but there was nothing unusual in the photos. I tried to convince myself it was just the loneliness and darkness playing tricks on me. An hour later, I noticed movement on the edge of the clearing. I lifted the camera to my eyes and adjusted the focus. At first, I thought it was a bear, a bulky figure moving low to the ground. But as I zoomed in, I realized it wasn't a bear at all. It was a person. The figure was on all fours, moving like an animal, hunched over in an unnatural way. I tensed up. What was a person doing out here in the middle of the night, crawling around like that? I looked away for a moment, but the uneasy feeling only grew stronger. When I looked through the camera again, the figure had approached a tree, the very one I had leaned against a couple of hours earlier. Then it did something that made my skin crawl. It straightened up, standing to its full height, tall, thin, with limbs that seemed too long for its body. It bent down and started sniffing the ground, like it was tracking something. Then it froze, raised its head, and made a long, eerie wailing sound, almost like a howl. I instinctively took another shot. At that exact moment, I heard a voice, a loud, desperate female voice. "Help me! I'm lost!" I froze, squinting at the figure through the lens. It was now crouched again, but this time it was facing me. Its eyes, illuminated in the camera's viewfinder, looked almost animal-like, reflecting the light like a predator caught in headlights. The voice came again, more distressed. "Please, I can't move." Something wasn't right. The voice sounded too clear, too precise given the distance. And the way the figure moved, it was too agile, too purposeful to be someone lost. Panic started to set in. I slowly began packing up my gear without taking my eyes off the figure. When I looked through the camera one last time, it was standing upright again, staring directly at me. It felt like it knew I could see it. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my gear and bolted for the truck, my heart pounding. I didn't bother looking back, just forced my way through the branches and shrubs, barely noticing the scratches on my arms. When I finally reached the truck, I jumped in, locked the doors, and switched on the headlights, flooding the road with light. The forest looked calm, as if nothing had happened. Later, when I reviewed the photos, one shot caught my eye. In the background, half hidden in the shadows, I could see the same figure. Even from that distance, it seemed like it was looking right into the camera. Since that night, I've stopped photographing in the forest alone. Sometimes I catch glimpses of that figure at the edge of the woods, as if it's waiting for me to come back. I still don't know what I saw, whether it was a person or something else, but one thing I'm sure of, I wasn't alone that night. A few weeks ago, my friends and I decided to spend the weekend outdoors. I was visiting my old buddy Nick with my brother, and Nick suggested camping at Marshall Lake near Flagstaff, Arizona. He and his girlfriend Lisa had been there before and swore it was the perfect spot. picturesque and quiet. My brother and I didn't know the area well, but the idea of spending the night under the stars sounded great. We drove to the parking area, unloaded our stuff, and set out to find a place for the tents. The day was perfect. Fresh air, breathtaking scenery. While we cooked dinner over the campfire, we laughed about past camping mishaps and planned tomorrow's hike. Nick kept saying this time would be different. No accidents, no bad weather, just good vibes. As the sun set, the temperature dropped quickly. We put out the fire and crawled into the tent. Before falling asleep, Nick peeked outside and commented on how unusually quiet the forest was. We agreed, but he shrugged it off, saying it was actually nice for a change, the perfect place to unwind. Lisa joked that at least we wouldn't be kept up all night by those annoying crickets. We all laughed, feeling relaxed. We had just started to drift off when we heard footsteps right outside the tent. The sound was so close it made us freeze. These weren't random animal noises. They were slow, deliberate steps, as if someone was trying to move quietly, but couldn't quite manage it. What was weird was that there hadn't been any rustling before that. No twigs snapping, no crunching leaves. It was like the steps just appeared out of nowhere. Nick tried to reassure us, saying it was probably a raccoon or a coyote, but when the footsteps moved to the other side of the tent, we all tensed up. Lisa whispered that we should check it out, so Nick carefully unzipped the tent and peeked outside with a flashlight. Nothing. The ground looked undisturbed, as if no one had been there. We tried to shake it off and settled back down, but then the footsteps started again, this time from a different direction. It was like someone was circling us. I couldn't help but feel like we were being watched. Nick eventually said he didn't feel safe anymore. Even the thought of staying by the fire didn't seem comforting. We agreed that maybe it was best to pack up and leave. As we were hurriedly gathering our stuff, I glanced back toward the tree line and saw something strange. A tall, dark figure just standing there, perfectly still. I squinted to make sure, but when I looked again, it was gone. As we drove away, none of us spoke. We were all trying to process what just happened. Just as we were nearing the highway, we heard a series of loud gunshots in the distance, like someone was emptying a whole clip. We exchanged nervous glances, speeding up a little more. Once we reached the motel, the receptionist gave us a concerned look. He asked where we had been camping, and when we told him, his expression changed. "You guys were camping out there? Locals don't go near that place at night," he said quietly. The next morning, a man staying in the next room came over to talk. He had been at the same lake that night and had also heard the strange noises. He said he felt so uneasy that he packed up and left too. We couldn't shake the feeling that something was really off. We still don't know what it was. Maybe just some crazy person messing with us, but part of me wonders if we got lucky by leaving when we did. It happened years ago, but I still remember the fear like it was yesterday. I was 16 and had decided to sneak out in the middle of the night to smoke a little weed. There was a small wooded area nearby, not a dense forest, just a natural spot with trails and some picnic tables. During the day, local teens would hang out there, so I figured it would be a good place to chill alone at night. I parked my car near the trail entrance, grabbed my stuff, and made my way to one of the small fire pits. It was a popular spot, and I felt pretty comfortable being there alone. I lit a small fire, sat down, and started preparing my joint. The night was quiet and calm, and for a while, it was actually pretty relaxing. Just as I was finishing rolling, I heard a noise behind me, a rustling sound like something moving on four legs. I tensed up, but reminded myself that it was probably just a coyote. They're pretty common around here. But then the sound changed. The footsteps shifted from four legs to two, like someone started walking upright. Suddenly, the night went completely silent. No crickets, no wind, just the crackle of the fire and my own breathing. A chill ran down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I called out, trying to sound confident. "Hey, who's there?" No answer. I scanned the darkness, straining my eyes to catch any movement, but nothing. I tried to convince myself it was just a homeless person passing through, but the uneasiness didn't go away. I was just about to pack up when I heard a voice. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. A man's voice asking, "Can I get a light?" At first I felt relieved. At least it was a person. But something about the way he said it was just wrong. The tone was flat, almost robotic, like someone trying to mimic a human voice. I hesitated and then called out, "Hey, step into the light. You're freaking me out." Silence. And then the same voice again. "Can I get a light?" This time, I was genuinely scared. The voice didn't move, didn't change, just repeated the same words in the same tone. My instincts kicked in, and I snapped, "Oh, get lost, man." And that's when I heard it, the sound of something running away on four legs, fast and heavy, crashing through the underbrush. I froze, listening as the sound faded into the distance, and suddenly the night sounds came back. Crickets chirping, leaves rustling in the breeze. It was like the forest had been holding its breath. I didn't waste any more time. I kicked out the fire, packed my things as quickly as I could, and headed back to the car. As I drove away, my mind raced. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just some weirdo messing with me. Maybe I was just too high and imagined things. But years later, while browsing random videos online, I stumbled on a story about skinwalkers. Hearing people describe their experiences made my stomach drop. Everything matched. The mimicry, the unnatural movements. Suddenly, I wasn't so sure I'd imagined it after all. Since then, I've been a lot more careful about where I go at night. I still can't decide what scares me more, the possibility that it was just a person trying to mess with me, or the chance that I recently came across a story from a girl who had a strange encounter in the woods, and it immediately reminded me of something that happened to me during the lockdown. I still can't explain it, but the memory gives me chills to this day. Back during quarantine, I used to ride my bike through the forest at night to clear my head. Fewer people, total quiet. It helped me stay sane. One night around 3 a.m., I hit my usual trail. It was dead quiet, not a single soul around. I reached this open stretch of the path, a clearing where the trees thin out, and you can see the stars. I took a break, sat on a fallen log, turned off my bike light, and just soaked in the silence. It was peaceful. Then I heard it, a voice behind me. "Hey, you out here alone?" I froze. It wasn't loud, but something about it made my skin crawl. I turned around but didn't see anyone, just trees and darkness. "Who's there?" I called, trying to sound calm. No answer. A few seconds passed. Then the voice came again. Exactly the same tone, the same words. "You alone?" This time I felt something shift, like pressure building in the air. I suddenly didn't feel so alone anymore. There was no sound, no movement, just that voice hanging in the silence. I stood up and grabbed my flashlight, shining it toward where I thought the voice came from. Nothing, just empty trail. But something didn't sit right. The voice had sounded off, like someone trying to imitate human speech but not quite getting it right. Too even, too emotionless, like a recording loop just slightly wrong. Then I heard it again, closer this time. "You alone?" I didn't wait around. I jumped on my bike and pedaled like hell. As I rode, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting something to lunge out of the trees. But there was nothing. I didn't tell anyone for a few days. Then I shared the story with a friend, and he told me something that still gives me goosebumps. He said there's a legend. If you're in the woods at night and hear a voice asking if you're alone, don't answer. Supposedly, some spirits need your permission to follow or harm you, and answering that kind of question gives it to them. Since then, I haven't stopped biking at night, but I'm a hell of a lot more careful. I keep my flashlight on. I don't stop in the dark. And if I ever hear that voice again, I won't say a word. My wife and I were driving through northern Arizona on Highway 89, somewhere between Flagstaff and Page. It was just after 1 a.m. We were heading home after a long shift, tired but relaxed. We'd done plenty of night drives before. Fewer cars, cool desert air, stars above. The headlights lit up the cracked asphalt and scrubby bushes along the roadside. The desert felt endless and empty, almost peaceful. Then in the distance, a row of glowing eyes appeared. I eased off the gas. As we got closer, I realized it was a pack of coyotes, or maybe wild dogs, just standing at the edge of the road. 6, maybe 7 of them, completely still staring at us. Their eyes glowed in the headlights like tiny spotlights, all aimed straight at us. Something about it made me uneasy. I pressed the pedal and we drove past them. That's when my wife said very quietly, "One of them is chasing us." I checked the rear view. Nothing. But then I glanced to my right and saw it. One of the creatures was sprinting alongside the car just outside the light's edge, hugging the shadows. But this one was big. Much bigger than a coyote should be, long-limbed, moving fast. I accelerated. That's when it did something that made my blood freeze. It didn't slow down. It kept pace with the car, smoothly, silently, and its face. I didn't get a full look, but what I saw wasn't right. Its snout looked too long. Its eyes burned yellow, almost like they were glowing from inside. Then up ahead, I saw the headlights of another car approaching. In that instant, the creature veered off the road and disappeared into the dark. But just before it vanished, I swear I saw it rise slightly, like it was standing upright. Its limbs stretched out unnaturally, long and crooked. If we'd been driving through Australia, I might have thought it was a starved kangaroo, only this thing wasn't from any place I knew. We didn't say much after that. We pulled into the first motel we saw and just sat in the car for a while. No one cried, no one panicked. We were just in shock. I've gone over it 100 times in my head. Maybe it was some injured animal or a trick of the light, but I can't shake the way it moved, how it watched us, how it kept up. Later, I read that northern Arizona has a long history of strange sightings, especially out near the reservations. Some people say there are beings out there that can take the shape of animals, skinwalkers. I don't know what we saw that night, but ever since, I avoid driving through the desert after dark.
Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? A moment that still haunts you to this day? If so, we want to hear it. Share your story in the comments and maybe we'll tell it in the next episode.